What is an architectural treatise? It is a written work by an architect who is defining what architecture is, what it should do, and what it should hopefully become. Gottfried Semper, a German architect, wrote his own architectural treatise named The Four Elements of Architecture. Semper describes four elements from which he believes architecture derives from. The elements are hearth, fireplace, mound, roof, and enclosure. From these elements, Semper focused on enclosure, which is the creation of spaces by using barriers. According to Semper, enclosure began with the action of weaving and wickerwork to make carpets. Carpets were later turned into walls, which were used to separate and create spaces. The Yingzhou Fashi, written by Lai Ji, is the oldest existing Chinese treatise on buildings and craftsmanship. In the treatise, Ji specifies building technicalities, proportions, and methods for construction. An important feature of the Yingzhou Fashi is the Kai-Fan system, which was used for all dimensional measurements in structural carpentry. The system has 8 grades based on the scale of the building and is modular. Song buildings were classified based on the timber grades and details such as framework, roofs, and column size. Such classified structural types were
殿堂 palace, 厅堂 mansion, 屋宇 ordinary house, 庭榭 pavilion.
This treatise helped unify China by setting standards for architecture. Logier's treatise is arguably the most important architectural book of the century. In his treatise, he states that Vitruvius is no longer relevant. Vitruvius has in effect taught us only what was practiced in his time. In its place, he substitutes the notion of reason, now to be the sole guide for architectural decision-making. From his rationalist spirit comes the logical creation of a primitive hut, and Laguerre deduces from it 3 essential elements: the column, the entablature, and the pediment, which will now constitute all that is essential to architecture. Some building parts, such as walls, doors, and windows, are allowed because they are functionally necessary. All else, however, is a fault. The parts that are essential are the cause of beauty. The parts introduced by necessity cause every fault. Maison Carré, Nimes. Everything here accords with the true principles of architecture. A rectangle with 30 columns supports an embouchure and a roof, closed at both ends by a pediment. That is all. The combination is of a simplicity and a nobility which strikes everybody. Similarly, east front of the Louvre. Koolhaas ponders on the spectacle of the Big Apple within delicacy and wit in Delirious New York. It is a retroactive manifesto for Manhattan. He introduces the concept of Manhattanism, whose program is to exist in a world totally fabricated by man, an example to live inside fantasy. Koolhaas reasons that at the end of the 19th century, a culture of congestion, caused by an explosion of population, information, and technology, made Manhattan a laboratory for the invention and testing of a metropolitan lifestyle and its architecture. He states that Manhattan is still in search of a theory. Once identified, it should yield a formula for an architecture that is at once ambitious and popular. In Durand's Treatise on the Lectures on Architecture, written in 1802, he talks about his opinion on ideal architecture post-French Revolution and Reign of Terror. There was an anti-aristocratic fervor where function became more sought out after than intricately designed giant buildings. This really showed in Durand's teaching, which was focused on exact grid systems and was completely devoid of historical and stylistic interests. It was about fitness to purpose and economy of means. He argues that simplicity in its purest form, function, is the ideal in architecture when he states, if the same building is disposed in the most economical, that is to say, the simplest manner, will it not appear as grand and as magnificent as it is possible to be? Undoubtedly, it will, because the eye will embrace the greatest number of its parts at one glance. Again, where is the need to chase after all those partial beauties? We agree that simplicity is an ideal goal to pursue in architecture. We can look to work like the Seashore Library by Peter Zumthor to see carefully planned and beautifully constructed buildings that your eye can take in all at one glance. Frank Gehry's and Zaha Hadid's work, on the other hand, presents this form over function ideal in architecture that prioritizes a concept versus a building's fitness to purpose or its economy of means, which can take away from the building's most fundamental purpose in Durand's eyes, a shelter. Mies, in his treatise on the office buildings, talks about how office buildings should be created through the use of materials such as concrete, glass, and steel, and also about the functionality of the workspace. He states, "The office building is a building of work, of organization, of clarity, of economy. Bright, wide workrooms, uncluttered, undivided, only articulated according to the organism of the firm. The greatest effect with the least expenditure of means." Mies is promoting a more collaborative environment by breaking down barriers of the stereotypical cubicle work culture. Modern offices such as Googleplex headquarters in Mountain View, California, use aspects of his treatise in the bright, wide workrooms conducive to a more collaborative office culture. Mies van der Rohe made a bold statement of what new skyscrapers should be when submitting a design for the Friedrichstrasse office building contest. Mies emphasizes the importance of iterations through expressing his technique to find out proper angles for glass paneling and exterior. Mies explains through the use of glass facade and glass interior give much needed light to what would otherwise seem dark and closed off. He goes as far as to say that everything but the elevators and stairs should be glass to give the appearance of openness. Le Corbusier's Villa Savoy is the foundation for his treatise 5 Points for a New Architecture. His first point is that the ground floor should be raised to create a continuous green space under the building. He then says that the building's floor plan should not be defined by structural limitations, so that the floor plan can be arranged in any way imaginable. This freedom then allows the facade to separate itself from the building structure, which can then open the interior up to a horizontal window which can light the interior more effectively than vertical windows. Corbusier then topped the villa off with a roof terrace and garden which extends the green space from beneath the ground floor. It is difficult to completely agree or disagree with every treatise written. In general, we believe treatises are good models to follow for a foundation of understanding basic construction of different types of buildings. However, architectural treatises limit the creativity and diversity of structures. It boxes up what architecture can be by its specifications and limitations. So should we continue to follow the regulations of treatises, or should we begin to start thinking outside of the box?